delightful sample of escape literature called The Substitute. For 7 long years, Henri Duval had suffered the equatorial heat and the blazing sun and the tortured labors of the French penal colony, and all because he'd poisoned the husband of the woman he loved. For 7 long years, he'd sweated and slaved at the impossible task of hacking clearings into the jungle island. An impossible task, for no sooner had a tract been cleared than the relentless tropical overgrowth closed in again like a green tide. But this was the punishment for murder, and Henri was forced to undergo its rigors, left only to dream of cool Paris and cool wine and the cool lips of a woman. And then one day he discovered the herb.
Sacre Dieu! It is hellebore!
Henri was an expert on poisons, and he knew hellebore, the herb with the rootstock that yielded the poisonous glucoside helleborin. He immediately recognized the plant and tore it from the spongy jungle floor, stuffing the short roots into his blouse.
Hey you, Duval! Keep that machete going!
When the blazing equatorial sun had sunk into the western sky and the exhausted, bedraggled prisoners had been marched back into the penal colony compound, Henri Duval had made his plans.
They brag that no one has ever escaped from this island purgatory. Well, I, Henri Duval, will be the first.
Henri hid the hellebore roots in his crawling mattress, and the next day began to gather the things he needed. When the clearing crews were again marched out into the steaming jungle, he chose the right-sized bamboo stalk. Carefully, he gathered just the right-shaped palm fronds. And when the guard wasn't looking, he hacked just the right amount of cork bark. These he hid in his shirt, and that evening successfully smuggled them into the compound. Late that night, when the other prisoners were asleep, Henri worked. With the knife he'd stolen from the mess hall, he carefully carved the chunk of cork bark into a smooth, round teardrop shape. Slitting the elongated end, he inserted the correctly shaped palm fronds, trimming them down. Next, into the bulbous end of the cork teardrop, he inserted the needle he'd taken from a fellow prisoner's sewing kit. And voila! Henri had fashioned an accurate dart, a dart that would be poisoned. And blown through the hollow bamboo stalk he'd cut. All that night, Henri practiced with his blowgun until his aim was deadly. Finally, he hid his murderous weapon along with the hellebore roots in his mattress and lay down for the few hours of sleep left to him.
If all goes well, I will be in Paris next month.
The next day, Henri found 2 flat rocks and smuggled them back into the compound as he had done with the other things. That night, he ground down the hellebore roots, carefully catching the juice that ran from the pulverized meat in a tin cup. Then he dipped his dart needle into the highly toxic poison. And the next morning, as the governor of the penal colony strode across the compound's grounds on his daily constitutional, Henri took careful aim and let fly his lethal missile.
Mon Dieu!
By nightfall, the governor was dead. And a poor unfortunate prisoner in whose mattress the blowgun was found was whipped to death, vainly protesting his innocence to the last. Henri, along with 2 other prisoners, was luckily assigned the job of building the coffin in which the demise governor's body would be kept until the arrival of the monthly boat from the continent. The governor had been a famous French naval hero. Henri had planned it all. He knew that the governor's body would be shipped back to France. He counted on it. This was Henri Duval's plot. This was the means for his escape.
Air holes? Why, Henri? Because Chien is dead. Why does he need air holes in his coffin?
To allow for expanding gases, mon ami. The night before the monthly steamer's expected arrival, Henri slipped from his barracks and hurried to the chapel where the governor's body lay in state in the crude coffin. He stripped the body of its clothes and dressed it in his grimy prison uniform. Then he slashed and hacked the face until it was unrecognizable. In the morning, they would find the body and think that an enemy of Henri Duval's had attacked and murdered him during the night. Henri carried the disfigured corpse into the barracks and placed it quietly on his cot. Then he took the food he'd hoarded and the can of water and hurried back across the compound to the chapel, and climbed into the recently vacated coffin to wait for them to come and carry him to the waiting boat and eventual freedom. The next morning, footsteps approached, and suddenly Henri heard pounding and hammering.
Sacre Dieu! They are nailing the inn!
At first, Henri was terrorized, but then he calmed down as he realized. Rien. When I get to France, I will certainly have an opportunity to free myself. It is nothing. Happily, Henri felt his coffin lifted and carried out of the chapel, across the compound, down to the penal colony's wharf, and up the gangplank of the supply ship. He listened with glee to the shriek of the liner's whistle, the muffled roar of its engines. He felt the gentle heaving as the ship backed off from the pier and headed into the open sea. He calculated the approximate length of the voyage and realized that he would have to put himself on a strict rationing program to make his meager food supply last. It was hours later before he afforded himself his first morsel, washed down by one gulp of the tepid water. And that night, the humming ship's engine lulled Henri into a peaceful sleep. But he was awakened rudely the next morning as the coffin was lifted brusquely and carried on deck.
What now?
He listened as the engines stopped, and only the gentle lapping of the ocean waves drifted through the convenient air holes. And then he heard the captain's voice, droning. And so, in compliance with Governor Milot's last request, Henri's blood froze in his veins as he felt the coffin lifted to the ship's rail and slid forward over it. We commit the coffin containing his body to the deep for burial at sea. Henri's scream was cut short as the coffin hit the tossing brine and water poured in through the air holes, filling his pine prison, filling his blubbering mouth, filling his gasping lungs.